Yes, I'm sure. I want to start the stream.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need.
Really funny. Really funny.
Quality, quantity, and variety. Good morning.
Okay.
Making up the rules as we go along.
I almost got it, but I missed it. Yeah. Another opening, another show. With coffee. With slurping coffee. And it's hot. And it should be hot because I took the extra efforts to try to make sure that it was hot. For some reason, I'm still tilted over to this other side. Why is that? Somehow my screen is off. I mean, is this thing? No, does this need to be shrunk somehow? Maybe. Does that help a little? I'm trying to find a comfortable spot where I could talk into the microphone and not be disappeared behind this image over there. Which I really wish I had Photoshop working right now, because I would be able to take from the Game Over girl. I've got the Game Over hat. I washed it again yesterday, and as you can see, it is, well, no problem with the type, but it is starting to become like kind of looser and poplinish like, as opposed to the old, what I call boat head hats. So got it that time. Anyway, we didn't get the
Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
Okay, we missed the Rock Flux on the last one. I was trying to put a bunch of them together. So anyway, here we are again. It's Saturday, August 21st in the calendar year 2021 in the former United States. I say, when I bend down, I'm drinking my coffee. I say former because, well, because it is. You know, I probably should have stayed in bed for another hour or so. Those of you who know I was a little bit under the weather. Well, more than a little bit. And I took one of these anti-dizzy pills. Anyway, so the title of the show is Running Out of Things to Talk About, you know? And I made a little chat notation, mediocracy or just mediocrity, as opposed to the mediocrity. And the title card, of course, which brought you here it's got the chattering teeth, running out of things to talk about. And that makes everything really bright, and it's already bright. And it's hotter than hell in here, so I will have to get up. I have the window open. It was supposed to be 64 degrees. I'm just going to give you my
Weekend weather.
Because the National Weather Service has, like, they're asleep at the wheel. It's saying it's 66 degrees outside here. It was supposed to be, I think, a little bit cooler than that. Today's going to go up to 84. It's going to be in the 80s, and by next Wednesday, it's going to be up to 90 degrees. And the overnight, is going to be muggy. So that's the Mid-Atlantic region. Like I said, I'm about an hour away from one of the entrances to the Northern Appalachian Trail. Just to give you some perspective, generally speaking. Sorry, I've got my Hawaiian shirt with, like, the cutoffs to try to air myself out as much as possible. I do not feel 100% today, though I'm intending to, whether I will feel up to it after this show, I'm intending to walk to the grocery store, which is about a mile, 1.2 miles or so. Just because exercise is a necessary thing, and I want to see if I can do it. I took one of these pills that should keep me steady, but I guess maybe I'll need to have a walking stick with me as I go. So I'm not going to keep this up like I did a lot of times. I'll keep the title thing up all thing because there's too much glare in my face, and it's too early in the morning for that. It's 5:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and chattering teeth. And that's about, I'm on schedule. I started around right just before 5, which is good. So if I move this way, I'm more comfortable, but my face is hit. If I move this way, I'm just not as comfortable. And because of YouTube, the way they work, YouTube, which has nothing to do with the tube anymore, cuts off stuff. Like it should cut off what I see is my monitoring myself. It shouldn't cut that off, but it does. It cuts off like a little bit. So I have to be cautious on the way I set myself up and what I have showing. So anyway, yeah, running out of things to talk about is the title of this show. Chattering Teeth. And that this idea is, I was thinking of, this idea of mediocrity. Remember the movie Idiocracy, and I'm not the first guy to talk about that, but everybody, we're living in idiocracy, right? Who hasn't heard, somebody else say that? So I was thinking about that this morning when I was laying in bed waiting and contemplating what I would talk about today before I came down. Had my bowl of porridge. I'm out of like berries and stuff, so it was just like oatmeal with like some oatmeal silk type of stuff. It's actually, I've been using it recently, but it's like endless. I'll never buy it again. It comes in too big a container too. But I guess it's not bad. It's not like it's made me sick in my stomach, but just endless, and it's unsweetened. And then I put some unsweetened organic coconut in it, so that doesn't help. I put some cinnamon and raw honey, so the raw honey offers a little bit of something. But I figure it's a semi-healthy breakfast, and it's high fiber. Usually I have blueberries or raspberries in there, but I'm all out. That's one of the reasons why I'm walking to the grocery stores to get a couple of healthy things. If I can make it down there without falling over. Vertigo, dizziness, weirdness. Now I got a head filled with radiation from a CT scan. We got to use a real strong, high dose to get through the skull. Yeah, I didn't even need to do it, I don't think. Ended up talking to someone else yesterday after the fact. Said, oh yeah, something like that happened to them. They were prescribed some kind of pill and this, that, the other, and then something else. And as usual, all this stuff occurs on a weekend or when my doctor is closed. And I told you the hospital wasn't accepting anyone at the inn the other day, so I had to go on this whole journey excursion, and it was just utter madness. And yeah, it's just one of those things. So we're not going to talk about that because yesterday was a pretty good show. The show about House, where's House when you need him?
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So right now, what I'm saying is that, of course, it's an idiocracy, as everyone else is saying. But I've got an idea. I thought, well, maybe it's just a media-ocracy. Or mediocrity or mediocrity. I could have even added that. You see? So mediocrity, which is a real word, which you know what it is, and mediocrity then is this like, that's what the country is. But then I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, it's a mediaocracy almost. I mean, of course, it's a corporatocracy. I'm not going back on that one. I mean, that's pretty clear who's running the show. Big tech, big pharma, the whole it's a corporatocracy now. It's not we don't live in a political world. But, everything's mediocre. Have you noticed that? For the year 2021, it's all mediocrity, Yeah, it's idiocracy. That's the functionally illiteracy part of the whole thing. I mean, that's obvious. Like I say, it's like the corporatocracy is obviously. The idiocracy is obvious. All right? But when you really dive into it and contemplate it and start to analyze it, which is what, look at it, in depth, like try to figure it out. Like how did we get here? And I come up with, it's like everything's mediocre. But then it's just obvious that it's a mediaocracy now. Social media, the media, as like I say, the media machine, everything from social media to broadcast media to, print media, all the media, the entire media machine. And so we're in this mediaocracy because everyone knows, literally practically everyone, you don't say everyone, but 99.9 whatever. The only thing, like I say, you don't know what you don't know. And as my shirt that's crumbled up on the side there, everything you know is wrong. And the reason I'm keeping the girl up with the Game Over hoodie, which you can get at TonyCaravanLive.com, and I'm wearing the Game Over hat. Which if you might like it as is, some people like the large crowned hats, but if you wash it a couple times, it just becomes like a regular cap. So that's kind of nice. So whatever material they did, it's very durable, and whatever print they used, it doesn't wash off. It's very and the shirts that I sell are the same way. I've washed them a bunch of times, and no fade or anything like that. But as I touched on yesterday, but didn't get that wasn't the gist of the show and the primary focus, is that, we don't have, it's the whole idea of the old, where they used to say, where are the flying cars? But it's the idea, I was comparing it to the medical profession, like where's the Star Trek bed, or whatever. But it's like everything's mediocre, And your first reflex probably is to argue that point by saying, what are you talking about? Look at the iPhone, or look at the smartphones, look at the computers and all that. And I'm like, yeah, mediocre. They're mediocre. They, what are people really doing? It's nothing, there's nothing new under the sun, more or less, and yeah, it's mediocrity. It's just mediocrity. It's like Devo said in the 80s, it's de-evolution, right? We're de-evolving as a species. So in Devo, think about that. That's like almost 40 years ago. 35 years ago, whenever they came out with We Are Devo. Was that like something like that? Close to. So, but this mediaocracy concept, it's like we're a collection of ocracies. There's all these isms out there that people are into now, but it's like, you can't really pin things down to being one kind of ocracy, like a corporatocracy, idiocracy, mediocrity, or mediaocracy. And so that's what I meant about you don't know what you don't know. Because if you think about it, it's like the media is everything to people. Like it's the whole well, their whole world, you know. And it's allegedly, you know, supposedly, you know, ideally, but it doesn't. It fails horribly at it. Is supposed to bring you the world. But it's a filter is what it is. You know, it's a filter. And for the most part, it really is just this. It's like those chattering teeth you wind up. I used to have a set of them somewhere, and I don't know where they ended up. I used to have all that kind of garbage around my desk, goofy things. I must have gave them to somebody. But yeah, the media is just a bunch of wind up chattering teeth, just like the politicians are the same way. And everything's the same old thing, you know. Now, you know, it's like the names and places change, but the stories stay the same. And people are still glued, you know, to the media, whatever their, you know, media filter is, whatever they choose as their filter to life. It's like, you know, behind me here, those are 3D glasses. You know, you get the green and the blue and the red. You know, you wear them and you can see this 3D thing. And, you know, by the way, just a quick aside, if you ever have a pair of 3D glasses by any chance, and you like search on YouTube, there's some people, I wish I could do it, you know, that have recorded these 3D videos. And it's like their hand is reaching right out. I mean, you literally feel like it's coming right at your face and stuff. You know, taking a chainsaw and the chainsaw's coming out of your monitor when you're wearing those things. It's pretty crazy stuff. I haven't watched those in a while. I don't know if anybody's still doing it, but some guy was doing it, and he was pretty outrageous. But back to the mediaocracy. Yeah, it's mediocre, and everything is media directed, right? It's like the politicians are not just their strings are being pulled by the corporatocracy, but it's almost like somehow in that mix is this like concern for how the media is going to deal with it. That's why I always sometimes say it's like just all showbiz. Because in show business, you know, the idea is that you're always conscious if you're in entertainment or anything like that. Anything public relations wise, doesn't even have to be entertainment, you know. There's always this idea of your image, right? So you have to be conscious of your image, you know, the brand, you know, if you're a product based company or something. But in general, whatever you are, whatever your brand is, you know, whether you're an entertainer, politician, or, you know, just some, you know, XYZ corporation, right? The media has gotten involved in there. Now, the media is part of the corporatocracy, obviously, because they are corporate media, and they are like a facet. They are owned by the corporatocracy. So the same corporations. So when you say big tech, you know, and Wall Street and stuff, you know, Wall Street's involved with that because they're the same companies, you know, these big companies, Viacom, you know, or whatever, you know, Comcast. You know, they're all, you know, it's just, there's only a handful of them to begin with, but they're all corporate and they're all intertwined with the corporatocracy. But the people that work there are mediocre, and their shows are mediocre, and they're silly. You know, they're silly, stupid. You know, it's like, it's almost impossible for somebody with half a brain to even watch it. It's just goofy stuff. And so, yeah, it's like a mediocrity, idiocracy. It's almost like it depends on what, you know, what world you live in, right? Because that's the thing. We live in different worlds. I think I talked about that on one of these webcasts. You know, the different worlds we live in. You know, whether we're separated, you know, by, wealth, status, right? Geographical location, philosophy, things, whatever it might be. It's like we're all in, we're all so fragmented into these different worlds. And so depending on where you're coming from, you might view one might look at that world or that, segment of society and say, that's idiocracy there, But for the most part, I think when you look at the big picture, in general, it's just downright mediocrity. Everything's mediocre. Our healthcare system, which I talked about yesterday, and like I say, I'm still not feeling 100%. So it's like, it's mediocre. They're not really curing people. The way you would expect in the year 2021. And again, you have to be somebody who's older than 21 or 30 to understand that. Because you have to have lived in an era to know that the things that people think are a big deal today, have been around, before. It's like I said once, I don't know, it was in a beat poetry song of mine. I don't mention that much, too much anymore on these shows, but I've got 50 beat poetry songs. So if in my book 8, which is like the infinity sign on it, is really just a compendium of 50 of my, that's primarily what that book is. If you want to read my beat poetry or have a lyric sheet, to go along with it, that's what that book is. It's all my beat poetry. But in one of, I believe it was in one of my tracks, I said, something to the effect of the line, washers and dryers. It might have been an essay I wrote, and it still would have ended up in a book. But, washers and dryers are the same as they've been, for 50 years. They wash and dry, So you could add some more buttons on it, and all that stuff. But even like the washer and dryer I put up as a title card on this show not too long ago. And I could, I can grab that just for the hell of it. Oh, just for the sake of it, I just realized. Oh, I don't even have that. That's gone. All right. Now, I'm just going to go to my show titles quickly. And you can't see what I'm doing because that's how this computer works. Washer, dryer. And I'm just going to bring that up just for the sake of it. But if you look at this washer and dryer, and, well, maybe I was right to have it big. You see, this is the classic old washer and dryer. This literally, these are this is in my washer. This is my dryer. Okay, the one I use. It's an older picture from when I first got them hooked up, but they're mine. Now, and you could see the various dials on the top of them. And I don't really. I just set everything to like full load, hot, cold. There's some other thing on the washer. I don't even know what it is. And then there's like 3 different types of cycles. I just do like the regular cycle. And on the dryer, there's like multiple choices you have to do all kinds of stuff too. So it's not as if these old things didn't have capabilities, right? I'm trying to get this, just turn that off. It's not like the old things didn't have capabilities. Like these new machines, and new ones have digital readouts or, some kind of, LED or lit something or other. And they've got some custom paint job, like a auto, the color of an automobile. Various metallic paints. But still all they do is wash and dry and pretty much don't do much more than the things did before. And people spend like $1,500 or $1,200 or whatever, But it's mediocrity. I mean, it's, you could say the same about the average automobile that the people drive. First of all, the so-called, what I call the car, right? And the truck and the SUV. Unless you get into like real specific, models and the higher price things, basically it's the car, the truck, and the SUV. They all kind of look the same, more or less. From somebody who's not really caught up in, in other words, I can't tell the difference between GMC, Ford, I look at these things, I could see Chrysler's like has like those square SUVs maybe, or they used to, I guess. I don't know. I don't really even pay much attention to them, Oh, is it getting hot in here? Son of a. Oh, man. I had to get up and turn the air conditioner on. I don't want to. I don't want to waste all that electricity and, It's frustrating. But so, yeah, it's, so it's like mediocrity. And you could come up with anything you look at. You look around. And I was talking to somebody on the phone yesterday about computers, and I think it was computers I was referring to specifically. Because, you have to buy a new computer, and we've talked about this many times, and most people are aware of it. But we're actually coming to a point, particularly in the Apple world, that come this fall, most of your iPhones and your Macs, if you've been holding on to older versions, are just not going to work. They won't work with the new operating system, and they're probably not going to work with various software programs. And people are already having problems with that. And so while they offer low-end models for people, they're just really expensive. If you get a high-end Mac, you could spend like $14,000 on it. At least 10 grand. But you can buy a low-end like Mac Mini for $699. But the thing is, it's no power. That's like no power. That would be for something to give to your grandmother or somebody like that who just wants to go on the simple basic use email and go on the internet or something and just type an email or write a letter. You'd need to at least get the $1,000 one, the $999 one or something, to get extra RAM and what you need to power, programs that you want to use. But like I say, computers, graphic wise, they've been around now for, 35 years. I mean, desktop publishing is almost about 35 years old. If you look at the original Mac, which I still have here, it's behind the girl. I don't know if we get rid of her and see if it's visible yet. Sometimes it's so dark in here. Where is it? Hoodie. You could barely make it out. Back over there. See that? See the Mac. That's the original Mac. And that was like, remember the 1984 commercial. I mean, that was out like 1985. So, yeah, roughly. And so within a year, that came with Mac Draw, Mac Paint, Mac Write, which ultimately were the programs that Adobe stole. if you look at the basic tools and the basic layout of like of the software companies, right? Even QuickTime in its early, when they were doing QuickTime Pro, which was Apple's program, they had something called FileMaker Pro. They had something, Claris Homepage, which I still have used to fix websites. That program's been discontinued for over 20 years. Same with FileMaker Pro. You know, it was sold and then it just vanished. But you know, all of that stuff, you know, that's like 35 years ago. That you know, the desktop publishing, you know, and it came with, you could get a $300 laser printer as opposed to a dot matrix printer eventually. And so you were able to make like flyers, a brochure, you know, the basic things. And then, you know, then they rolled out like a 300 baud modem, right? And I use this sometimes on the show. And that was the sound you basically heard every day when you logged onto your computer, right up in through the 90s for a lot of people. But what I'm trying to get at is that I remember in the 90s, because that's when I was doing the ad agency stuff, you know, mid to late 90s. And I was publishing some magazines too. So I was heavy into using desktop publishing, even more so than I had previously, like in LA or whatever, when I was doing stuff out there. And what I was working with the Macs of the 90s, okay, so these are 25 to 25-year-old computers, was putting out, you know, full color publications and, you know, things with hundreds of pages, you know, I mean, just really intense designed things. Editing video, like some of the early versions of iMovie, like iMovie came out. If you're not a Mac person, this doesn't make any sense to you, and so I won't stay on it too long. But I want to finish this thought. One of the early versions of iMovie, it probably wasn't the first, but it was like the second upgrade. I remember doing a music video in the 90s, editing a music video. You know, in other words, because I had a video card. So I was able to plug, and this video footage came to me on VHS tapes. And I was able to plug in the VHS, you know, player into the back of, you know, my card, my video card. And take all that raw footage of this band playing some live shows, playing in the studio, you know, doing stupid stuff in the street. You know, different things like that, the classic stuff. And it was a video for a particular one song. So it was going to be like a 3-minute and 30-second video or something. But they had them recording, you know, playing this song in multiple locations, this stuff. So I had to like audio sync. You know, people don't think about that when you're editing. You know, audio sync the clips so that you know, everything was there. And the original Mac had a really nice wave editor. You just dropped the individual footage into these things that look like slides, you know, like a slide projector. If you ever remember what a slide looks like. Well, some people, you have to be a certain age to understand what a slide is, as opposed to a photo print. You could get photos. Do you want a print or slides? And slides were put in a slide projector. Well, it was set up like that, and you just drop these things into the slides, and they were on your side of your screen, right side of your screen, so you could see all your stuff there visually, and name whatever you named it. And then below was kind of the same as the way it works now. But anyway, it was really super user-friendly, that you could still add titles and all kinds of neat effects and wipes and all that kind of stuff, right? And then suddenly they changed it to look like one of the pro editing programs, but it was only halfway there. But they just and they made a big, I remember when they were doing the presentation, they were like, oh, this is great. Look how we changed. And it was a radical change. So people had gotten to know this software program like me. And we're actually doing, I did a TV commercial for a hospital, speaking of hospitals. A couple TV commercials for some other businesses, just general businesses, one for our own agency. Like I said, some music videos. I mean, high-end stuff. And, I got into it, figured it out, did all this stuff. There were plugins. People were making plugins for the thing. And then suddenly they radically changed it to where it was similar to like the way it's been for the last 10 or more plus years. Which people who use like Final Cut Pro or something like that might, say, well, yeah. But what you don't understand is the idea was the simplicity, the drop and drag, and to get in there really fast and do it and not have all this other crap that basically became, in other words, they turned it into bloatware. So in order, if you didn't want, you should have the option. Sometimes you just want to do a computer. Like, all I went through to get this to function, to be able to do this, to have these effects that I have here, and to do this live and stuff was really a problem. It was like a 6-month process. And sometimes that's all you want. And like sometimes, like I say, some people just want to like browse the internet, get email, and, write a letter or do something. So they created all this bloatware, and so now you have to buy expensive machines. It's the same with Windows. In the past couple of years when Windows switched to 10, they literally made all their old machines obsolete because you couldn't upgrade to them. It's like this computer I have right here now. This is a Mac, but I cannot upgrade to the latest operating system because it just won't handle it. I mean, it's impossible. They tell you right there, system requirements for the new operating system. This one is not capable of it. Even though I have 16 gigabytes of DRAM in here, and like I say, some quad core processor and all that crap. And I'm obviously able to do video and all this stuff. And I was using Photoshop and all those things before I cut the cord with Adobe too. Because that's like ridiculous. You're renting software now. That's what the cloud is. It's like you're renting software. So it's mediocrity, So you have to either settle for mediocrity, right? The media is mediocre, but everybody's like kowtowing. Somehow the media is involved in everything, so it's a mediaocracy, right? And it's it's really weird. I don't know if I'm getting through to people on that. It's an observation that it's like I said, I'm running out of things to talk about because it's so mediocre. I was watching a show on Netflix. I got Netflix for like a month. I mean, that's at least one good thing now that you can get. You used to have to like get services for a year subscription. At least now you could like just get it for a month and then cancel it. Which is, that is nice, right? Especially if there's a couple of things that you want to watch. A decent movie comes on and a series that you could binge watch. You go, okay, it's worth the money. All right. But to have a yearly subscription, that's where you really lose out because sometimes you go like 2 months, because I've like let it ride sometimes, particularly last year when they were giving out free money, So I had a couple of those things. I figured out what the heck, I got this free money coming in from the government. They were giving everybody, total of about $3,200 when you add it all up. So I let some of them ride, but I would go on and it would be this like void after like, because first of all, you were locked down, so you weren't doing anything. So you're watching stuff, and then so-called Hollywood, but the content producers themselves were locked down, so they weren't producing any new content. And then the content they did produce was very serving. You know, it was like, it wasn't, you know, when something new would come out, it would just be like pushing some sort of ideology or something, you know. Like there wouldn't be, like, can't we just have the story? Do you have to have all these side things, right? I know, you know, just so you can like shove something in somebody's face, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, you're not, people don't get that. I think that's a big media mistake. I mean, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it does work. But for me, it doesn't. In other words, I just get more, my normal stance, like state, I guess you would say, is like live and let live. So my idea is I don't really care. I don't care about your ideology. I don't care about what you do or any of that stuff. I never did. You know, I mean, I went through maybe some phases here or there where I got, you know, caught up in some things. But I mean, generally speaking, my attitude was just like, you know, pursuit of happiness, have fun, right? Just be happy. And what I'm noticing, you know, or I've noticed, you know, geez, the last 10 or 15 years even, is that all this stuff, all these different ideologies people have that are their own, that aren't necessarily majority, they feel compelled to put these in TV shows, movies, and everything so that it's shoved down your throat and in some kind of hope that they're going to like convert you to their way of thinking or brainwash you. And when I see these kinds of things, and I'm not getting into any specifics because there's literally there's dozens and dozens of various ideologies that they're shoving down people's throats that, you know, that as far as I'm concerned, have no place in entertainment, right? Because entertainment is just diversionary. It's escapism, right? Why else would you do it? You know, the whole idea is, you know, you used to go to a movie. The idea was like, you know, it's 2 hours off, right? It's time out, you know, it's recreation, entertainment, right? But they have to actually make a concerted effort in every show, movie, practically, to like have put in the script, you know, all these various ideologies that they're trying to shove down the throats of the general populace. But see, when I see that stuff, that just, as opposed to me in my natural state being live and let live, you know, do whatever you want to do. That's fine with me. I don't care. I'm just walking this earth like anybody else, just trying to, you know, live my life and, you know, whatever, stay alive. But, it gets to the point where it gets stressed and frustrating to have this stuff thrown at you. Because it's, you know, a guy like me, it's not going to change me. It's not going to change my opinion. You know, once you reach a certain age or any age, really it should be usually the age of reason. You've kind of decided who and what you are and what you believe in. Now you're always learning, and, you know, you indeed do change, and sometimes you may have, you know, I'm willing to listen to a good, strong argument on anything that I may disagree with. And I'm willing to accept and admit that I was wrong about something, you know, and that's happened on a number of occasions. Still does occasionally, you know. You have to be open-minded. You know, sometimes I'll say something and I'll even say, I hope I'm wrong on something that I'm, you know, talking about. You know, show me, you know, because I hope I'm wrong. I don't want this to be true, right? But, I guess there are those people and I don't know if this is true or not because there's no gauge of it. No one else talks about this kind of thing. But, it must work. It must work on certain people. Maybe this so-called functional illiterate class of people that have been gone through the indoctrination or conditioning or, program of their Jello mold programming, that they fall, they're susceptible to that. And so they change their ideas or something like that, But it's like, it doesn't work for me. There's no way, there are just certain things. It's like the idea of having, ethics, a moral fiber, lines you won't cross, It's like, those things are, that's who you are. That's, consciousness, thinking again, my book Codex back there. So few people, the people just don't buy it. I mean, I'm putting out a new book by the end of the year, but this one here, where I try to deal with consciousness and just mess with, wake up your mind with different ideas. Pardon me. But, your consciousness, who you are, as you develop that uniqueness, the unique personality, the consciousness, you in the first person, whoever you are, that's not likely to, it's not something that changes like the weather, right? I mean, I've often talked about the idea that you are free to reinvent yourself anytime you want to as an adult. That's a beautiful thing. You're not pigeonholed into being a thing. Like sometimes when, you're in school, certain people are actually, kids can be victimized or pigeonholed, by bullies or whatever. The mug. It's weird how it's so far off camera. Yeah. But it's really not. It's like, it's only like 2.5 inches or so below the screen. That's weird. So yeah, you're not likely, to be swayed, from your, core values, so to speak. Right. And that, whatever that is, and that could be anything, it doesn't, it's just, who you are, your personality. Right. That's something that you have to make a conscious decision to change. Right. And you're free to do that. But generally speaking, though, get back to this mediaocracy. It's as if they're forced in the mix, and everyone is, I was trying to say this before, whether it's business, politics, whatever it is, they're all like bowing or mincing their words or watching, It's like the terms of service. It's like even doing this webcast, right? Watch what you say. Remember, the media is listening. The media is watching. The media, can destroy you at any given time. The media has become Big Brother, put it that way, not the government. And not really big tech so much, but the media is part of big tech. I mean, that's what, this is big tech, but I mean, this is also the media. And there's a difference between just saying big tech as like a blanket word, because big tech includes people working on, other technologies, right? Equipment, machines, robotics, coding, all kinds of things. Big tech companies aren't just social media companies, right? Or media companies in general. But the media companies are part of big tech, and the corporatocracy, they're like, they're intertwined. But yeah, you're here. Everything you do say is like the media has become Big Brother. Because they're always watching, always listening through their, tentacles in big tech, or through their, because they are part of big tech, and because they are part of the government, because the government's a corporatocracy, not an independent entity of elected officials, right? Which still, far too many people still believe that there's some kind of thing called the government here and other places. There really isn't. It's just a corporatocracy. But even the corporatocracy itself is being watched by the Big Brother media. So in a sense, there's I'm just adding this other, level to the corporatocracy, saying there's this, you could also think in terms of a mediaocracy, because it almost supersedes the corporate board, right? I mean, it would never happen, but what if some mavericks at the Washington Post and, PBS and CBS News, like some of these really extreme, powerful media companies, as opposed to the cable news and the social media companies, they're not as powerful as you think they are. But if some of these other ones, they kind of wield power, because people are like, I look up here because I have a TV on the wall, and it's like above here, and I don't turn it on anymore but I used to, and I still can watch. Like, I think I have Apple TV and something else connected to it. So if I wanted to, I could have something on there while I'm, I used to, while I was working on projects on my computer, I used to have like reruns of the show Supernatural. They used to like run like 3 or 4 in a row in the mornings. And I used to mindlessly have that on in the background while I was working on, just doing work on my computer, So I look up there, but what I mean is that most people are like looking at this TV. When I was in a waiting room at the hospital to get my ride home 2 days ago, I mentioned this yesterday briefly, there was like some kind of morning. See, I don't have TV anymore, so I don't even know it. But there was some kind of morning show on, and the two hosts were like, beyond social distancing, like they were like something like, I don't know, like 20 feet apart on these weird chairs. And then they were interviewing Shania Twain, who was in Canada, whose tour got canceled or partially canceled due to the thing or something. But it was utter nonsense, blather, mediocrity that was being, spaked by everyone involved. So much so that I left that room and went outside and sat outside on a metal bench and just waited outside to get picked up. Yeah. I couldn't even, I can't, that's how much it disturbs me. It's annoying. Yeah. But, people are just, but what I was saying is, so imagine if they, for some reason, these what you would call the bigger media, because a lot of people call it mainstream media or the legacy media, but they're really wrong about that. I used to say that stuff too, when I was like on Twitter and when I used to be like a Twitter person. But I don't do that anymore because I realized, no, they're still mainstream. That is mainstream media. Because what happens is they're intertwined with all these local TV stations. And so, like NBC, if there's an NBC or CBS affiliate in your town, people sit there and, this country, is aging. And plus, there's it's not just that, it's like lockdown. So people, they might be watching, renting movies or binge watching TV shows and stuff. But in the morning, they're getting up and they're putting on these like morning shows. And they're being exposed to this stuff. And then they're watching the nightly news or they're watching whatever they watch. And there's like, here's a news break, right? And then they just throw whatever propaganda or whatever they feel like throwing at people. So they're still highly influential, on public thought. But imagine if for some reason a couple of them decided to actually go and give us some straight ahead journalism. It was like this yesterday. I was talking about this Washington Post article about The Thing, and about how that was misreported about, they were reporting on China had held back information, blah, blah, blah. And it was almost to the point, where it was so well crafted. But it was definitely when you read the article, you came away with the idea that it almost seemed that the writer was trying to conform to keep their job. Because the gist of the article was really kind of very truthful as opposed to most of the stuff that gets reported. It all seems to be the company line, the corporate line, the corporatocracy line, toe the line, right? And this was kind of going against the grain on all of that. But then it kept qualifying or trying to qualify it, in some way. But it would go somewhere and then it would pull back, right? But like I say, once you go to a spot and expose a certain thing, pulling back or trying to say, well, it might, it's like, no, you don't understand. You already basically, exposed that thing. Trying to soften it or sweeten it doesn't, take it away. So this person was an investigative journalist. Well, imagine if there was a bunch of that stuff. Imagine if the mainstream media suddenly broke out in telling the truth, and if there was this week of truth, not towing the company line and going with the ongoing whatever. If they just did straight ahead journalism. And I have the right to talk about this. Like I said, I used to, I worked with a lot of journalists. I published magazines, and I worked at Columbia, and I used to work with some of the brightest journalists who've gone on to do some interesting things in this country. So I know what I'm talking about. I understand the media. Been involved in it my whole life, one way, shape, or form. So I know what's going on. And so people who hear me talk about this, and they know what's going on. People working those jobs, excuse me, know what's going on. Because like I said before, it's like with the news readers on the cable channels and stuff. Some of those people making $20,000 a year. And they do an hour show a night or something like that, or 2 hours. I mean, imagine it. 20 million. Did I say 20,000? $20 million a year. I have to watch myself, taking this pill. My eyes are still a little glassy because of it. I feel okay. But, you don't want to give up $20 million a year, So these people are very cautious and they toe the line. They mince their words. And then you go down to me on the low level, You know, no one watching the show live. And then when it's broadcast, you know, when the rerun comes afterwards, you know, maybe a handful, dozen people on a good day might watch it. But I'm not monetized or any of that. So I make nothing on this, and I don't have command any audience. And I don't have the time to play any kind of games that people suggest. Well, you should do this and do that and do that. It's like, yeah, you know, should do a lot of things, but it's like, you know, there's not enough time in the day. You know, I don't have enough time in the day. And then just when you get in some extra time, then you end up, you know, you get sick or something weird comes up, and it's like, I don't know. And it's not that important to me anyway. I'm not in this for the money. You know, just speaking my mind, doing my thing, exposing these ideas that I think are just not being discussed. Trying to put little, you know, put little pieces of data out there that your mind can, you know, do with whatever it wants to do, you know, stuff you might not hear somewhere else. I'm not trying to change your mind. I try not to be political, you know, or ideological. But the media is, and that's what I'm saying. So everyone is on guard with the media, whether it's someone like me who reaches, you know, a small audience, or somebody who reaches a larger audience. So a lot of those cable people making all that money only have an audience of about 1 million people, which it's hard to understand. Sometimes they get a couple million people. But in a country of 330 million people, the idea that you get paid $20 million a year to reach 1.5 million or 2 million people, you know, that's less than 1% of the population. Think about that. So I never really understood that. That's why I say they're not mainstream media. Mainstream media is the ones who have the affiliates, still have the affiliates, the networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, you know, that kind of thing. Because even though their ratings aren't high individually in certain shows, but their ratings are much higher. Sometimes they approach 10% reach. But they have that network, you know, so they're a real network because of local stations that are their affiliates. But even though that's the case, then, you know, that brings question, which I always wonder about. This is a really long babble, I know. But it opens up the idea. But these are things, but people don't discuss this stuff. I think there should be more discussion about the media. I mean, since they have such power in this country and around the world. And so few people really talk about the media. But despite the fact that they have low, technically, the ratings, and these ratings you can find, you know, they're public, you know. So you have to dig, right? But I mean, you know, there are Nielsen ratings, Arbitron ratings for radio. There are all kinds of rating systems out there, you know, that are a lot more accurate than they were years and years ago. You know, because they have, people are connected. So they know, you know, they literally know exactly who's watching. And so, you know, that's a part of like the big tech connection. You know, if you're Comcast, and Comcast owns NBC, you know, and you have a cable company, internet company, you know, and this television network, and then they've got this Peacock app now, right, that you could watch NBC programs through, free, with commercials, of course, so it's not free. I hate commercials. I can't stand them. But they know how many people, like, have the app. The app gives them feedback, right? It's like cable. They know, who's their subscribers are and what they're watching. They have all that direct feedback. It's not like where used to be you'd fill out this book, which I've done several times, and and they'd ask you all these questions and give you $1 to fill out the, the ratings book, whatever they used to call it. I don't even know the book itself, but it was Nielsen put it out. Maybe it was just the book. That's what we used to call it, the book. So they know specifically that they've got low ratings, and you think the politicians or people would realize that. So if you know that some announcer is only reaching 1%, or less than 1% of the population of this country, and you're a politician or you're some company and you're in fear and you watch your words and you're like totally, careful about what you say because this person might attack you on air. Well, that's another one of those like really weird things that, that I noticed that other people don't notice. It'd be like, why would you worry about what so-and-so said if they're only reaching 1% of the population? I mean, granted, it's liable to be picked up. A soundbite or a headline might be picked up by social media, right? But, there's always a possibility of something going viral, but that has to be something that's either ridiculously funny or like totally scandalous, right? You can't control what goes viral. People try to. I mean, that's the goal of half the people, who are in the business of social media, is trying to get, that thing that's going to put them over top, so they could make money, basically. Go viral, make money. I mean, even the media itself, remember, let's not forget, we're talking about corporate media. These are commercial media companies. The more eyeballs they have, the more they can charge for their commercials. And then that person, that newsreader, gets a raise or a bonus at the end of the year, or keeps their job, or loses their job. The ratings drop consistently. But the amount of influence, the idea, and the way that they filter the news on top of it. So, number one, the corporatocracy, right, which is the political system now. That's the 21st century politics, is pop culture, is the corporatocracy, right? Cult of personality are the new gods, like that show American Gods. That was a really freaky show. I watched some of that. It had gotten progressively worse, though. I think the first season was real intriguing, but I don't know. There's some good. It's an interesting thing to watch sometime if you've seen it. It was on Stars or something. But yeah, so everything is either filtered by the media, mainstream media, or people are consciously always like, walking on eggshells. It's an expression I use a lot, because they have the media as they speak, they're always thinking in terms of the media, the power of that media, and the media, what the media can like bring a firestorm down on them. It's pretty crazy. So, and that's how I came to the idea of like where I was saying, running out of things to talk about. Because there are so many things you can't talk about. I mean, which is so ridiculous, if you think about it. Because if you talk about it, it'll, you will be censored or something. or if you say the wrong, you could talk about it, but if you somehow take it, make a statement, questioning a thing or something like that, then you can be, penalized, or disappeared more or less, for, because the media machine now, this is the overall media machine, including social media. The media machine has said, no, you can't do that. We control everything. We're filtering everything and we're controlling the flow of information. So we can't have op-ed. We can't have opinions. Your opinion. Right? I mean, I guess this has grown out of the concept, because I remember I always thought it was weird when I first heard the word safe space. Right? And that's been out for a decade or more now. Not too much longer than that, though, but about a decade or so. And I remember first hearing this idea, we're going to establish a safe space on campus, or this is a safe space, or whatever. Find your safe place, or whatever. And you can't, and so the idea people had this, it wasn't a safe space from some kind of, something that could harm them physically. It was a safe space in terms of hearing of words, spoken word, which is really hard for somebody like me. Like, I'm a writer. I've written 9 books. I've written 50 beat poetry songs, which is basically spoken word, with music tracks. And so the concept that while I'm writing essays and doing this kind of stuff, and now eventually doing this, been doing this for a long time too. And the idea that, suddenly this thing arose that said the spoken word, is something that people must be protected from. It's very, that was shocking to me when I first heard that. Coffee's useless at this point. .08 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We don't set the clocks back till November 7th. So it's still real early.
Good morning.
Wake up there. Let's get a little bit of...
Really funny. Really funny.
I was putting you to sleep there, probably. Putting myself to sleep. When I realized I was babbling for an hour on that. But I really mean that, this concept of this, words, say when I grew up, and I've said this many times, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's a real old one. Kid rhyme, which is completely, not included in the terms of service today. So that this idea is that you can't speak out or question anything. And how does, so for somebody who basically their life is words, right? Is the spoken word or written word. And for someone to say, oh, you can't write that, you can't say that, right? You can't sing that. That's mind-boggling. It's that's a totalitarian or authoritarian, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, it's just off the wall. That's what it is. It's downright nuts. It's not like I say, it's one thing for somebody, it's understandable for, someone to propagate something like, or yell fire in a theater that could cause a stampede or something like that, and someone could be injured or worse. That makes sense. That's common sense. That's almost like, what they would call natural law, right? Something that, is dealing with not harming another person. Okay. I mean, that's understandable. But not disagreeing over an ideology, a policy, or even science. Science has always, questioned that. I mean, the basic of science itself has always been the idea of testing, questioning, right? Arguments, putting forth arguments, publishing papers that go against, to try to argue a point or disprove something or prove something. So, what we have today in the science world is scientism. So it's become dogma. And so if you question it, it's almost like, a witch hunt, or the Spanish Inquisition, you're subject to. Right? It's insanity. But it's the foundation of the whole concept of science is for others to question it or try to reproduce, prove that thing. And the only way you can prove a thing is by other people, experimenting or trying to duplicate the experiment or get the same results. And if someone has different results or, produces something different, then then the scientific community looks at that, and that's how it works. That's the free flow of information. And it's the same with ideas, outside of science, in philosophy, or just, in ideas of how in society in general, the free flow of information, the free flow of ideas, questioning this, questioning that. That's the whole idea. And so when a society no longer is controlled by a single ideology and censorship, no matter how noble the people who are doing this think they are, right? See, that's not the question that I'm putting out here. It's, I may personally disagree with some particular ideology, that can't be spoken or can be spoken or whichever. That's not what I'm talking about. See, that the idea is that who makes the decision what is, allowed to be spoken or written or questioned, and what it isn't allowed to be spoken, written, or questioned, right? Or who's allowed to have an opinion on something and who's not. And so then, because then society, that's the downfall of society. And that's why I say we live in the former United States, and Western civilization has already fallen. And I don't think there's any clawing its way back to any sense of normalcy. Because when you eliminate that, when you eliminate the concept of the free flow of information, and you create this mediaocracy, right? A mediaocracy of mediocrity, right? With pockets of idiocracy, that exist all in this grand corporatocracy, right? Then you have some kind of crazed authoritarian state. And, and it's like, instead of them having a dictator, right, in charge, the corporatocracy is in charge, right? So the corporatocracy becomes an entity. You know, and that's what this whole Davos, like World Economic Forum concept is about. So this collective of big tech, big pharma, you know, central banks, right? The war machine, right? The the military contractors, you know, big ag, you know, all of the major players, you know, that you could, you know, just, name, pull out, you know, that have subsets underneath them. All of those things combined form this corporatocracy, which, you know, has taken the place of the nation state, and ultimately there above that is this grand control system, right? So they don't need in other words, they're doing worse things than dictators have done, but because there is no dictator, people don't see it. It's there. It's not visible to them. So they're hiding behind the media machine. They're hiding behind, you know, the various elements of the corporatocracy. And that's what's scary about it, or it should be scary to most people. Like I said, I've removed myself as much as possible from it. So I do these things, like I say, this is like service to others, you know, as people say. Because it really doesn't affect me that much, you know, what they do. I don't watch TV. I'm not like, I have nothing to gain. I'm not relying on the corporatocracy, you know, to the degree that most people are. You know, I've reduced my cost of living, you know, because I don't really care. I have the things I need. I mean, yeah, I'd like a new computer, and I have a leaky roof. I'd like a new roof. But I mean, generally speaking, you know, I have, you know, I got my clothes, you know, I've got my dishes, you know, I don't know. I've got several computers. I guess if this one goes down, I've got a backup, you know, I might no longer do these things if this computer goes down. Because I don't think the other one's capable of it. I'm not sure. But again, that wouldn't be the end of it. That would be, you know, like I say, it wouldn't be my loss. So I'm just putting these things out there. You know, it's just like the type of stuff that people aren't questioning that. And they should. You really should question, you know, why are people like so afraid? You know, why are they walking on eggshells? And how did all this come to be? And the question is it fragile, or is it, or have they taken such measures? Do they have their tentacles into everything now, that there is no possibility that if a couple of serious journalists decided to expose this stuff, which would have to only be on mainstream media. See, it could not happen on social media. It could not happen on cable channels. It would have to come from what we call mainstream media. But if mainstream media ever turned on the corporatocracy, right, then that would be an interesting thing to see. And sometimes you get a glimpse of it, like in that Washington Post article, that someone is almost trying, you think. You could almost see the struggle in that article I was talking about yesterday. Maybe the writer themselves will disagree and was trying to play both sides and, you know, was trying to fool me and fooled me. It's possible. But, you know, it seemed to me that it was so written in such a way that the person was actually, it seemed as if they were struggling. They wanted to just be totally, you know, just be totally open and honest, but they were like holding back because they didn't want to have to deal with losing their job or the criticisms or, you know, what would, you know, the fallout of it, of honesty. It's crazy. So they're all walking on eggshells. So, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I at this point, I think this, you know, we're going in such a direction. Some people believe the system's fragile and it, you know, it could crack at the seams, you know. I mean, that's what that obviously these people who are caught up in politics, they still believe they have a chance. But I don't really see that, you know, because what bothers me most about the politicians and the cult of personality goes back to this whole idea of the media, is that when you donate money to campaigns, you tend to feed the behemoth of the media, because most of that campaign funding goes to the commercials on the media. And so you're funding the very thing that is at the heart of the problem. In other words, it's like somebody who's a dragon slayer, right? It's like you're there with the sword and you're trying to slay this dragon, right? That's terrorizing your village, right? But with one hand you're holding a sword and with the other hand you're feeding the dragon, food. You're feeding the beast. And that's what political donations to political campaigns are. You're literally feeding the beast, but you're pretending that you're supporting this dragon slayer, but you're feeding the beast. And that's why I think it's an exercise in futility, and we've already crossed the line. And oftentimes, that's why I reiterate, and I'll do it to this point, and this stuff, back here when I talk about this power thing that's powering my on-air light up top, these solar powered, how you can recharge that with your house car, the solar thing or whatever. And even this thing down the bottom here, this green thing, that's like that NOAA radio, thing you could charge your devices with too, and it's solar chargeable. And then I have a lot of this analog equipment that just, still works, that I use, like a transistor radio back there or whatever. But that, you'd be a little bit self-sufficient and remove yourself as much as possible from the influence of this, of the behemoth, of the corporatocracy, all of that. Live your life. My garden is such a small space, but it's produced so much food this year, and I've given so much away, but I still have like ridiculous plenty. And we've had a lot of rain, that stuff is just growing like crazy, man. So when I get down to the grocery store, it's like the only things I pick up very weird things, like, on my list I'm looking down at, it's like Swiss cheese, mushrooms, fry up some mushrooms with my tomatoes and zucchini and onions and stuff like that. Or something like yogurt or something I might put in my cereal. But everything else I'm growing, like I had so much lettuce this year, it was crazy. And if I, depending on how I feel, I'm going to try to walk down there. I don't know if I will. I'll see if I get, if I could get down there. I'll turn around if I feel like woozy or something. But it's like, I don't know. It's going to take me a while to recover from whatever this dizziness thing is that got me. Because I wanted to plant some fall crops, because there's still about, before the first frost in this area, is still about probably 45 days away or something like that, or at least a good 30 or 45 days. which is enough time. I have some starts of like chard, Swiss chard, which is like a lettuce. And so I'd like to put that in the ground, some more of that in the ground, so I could have lettuce with my tomatoes that are still going to be coming out over the next several weeks. So, you know, to make salads and stuff. I still have a bunch of potatoes in the ground, so that's like a big harvest. Carrots, I can see that I know I've got carrots to harvest. Beans, peppers, you know, all that kind of stuff. Various, I restarted some cilantro because that's a cooler weather crop. Though we're going to be in the 80s and up to 90s the next week, this isn't really the greatest time for cilantro, but I want to get some of that in the ground so at least I have some. But yeah, it's possible, you know, I mean, outside of gardening and outside of, you know, but I mean, you could always like, it's just a matter of reducing your cost of living. That reduces your dependency on a corporatocracy. And obviously cutting the cord from cable and TV is a way of affecting them. Just like donating to campaigns is a way of feeding them. Because that money most of that money goes to them. Yeah. So I don't think, you know, change, you know, people have this idea where they're obsessed with change. They think they can change the system. But it's like, I think we're past that point. You know? It's like we're in this, you know, we've really gone into this strange zone of existence right now. And I don't know. It's very puzzling, you know, where we're headed. It looks like this thing you can't talk about is going to be endless. Like they're just going to add it to the list, so it's like going to be with us every year. There could be more lockdowns again, or at least, you know, definitely restricting the flow of traveling. Like I say, I don't have those things. I did all my traveling when I was young. So I have no grand desire to go travel, you know, get in a plane and go to Europe. I already did that. I don't have a desire to fly over the Pacific or go to Hawaii. Already did it, you know, numerous times. But for people who haven't or who want to or need to for whatever reason, yeah, I feel bad for it. Because it looks like, you know, they're not only restricting the flow of information, but they're restricting the ability for people to gather, the restricting for people to travel. And the new software and stuff that's coming out, like, wait till you see, you know, like this, like I talked once about it, like, because I saw at the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference, this idea of improving their FaceTime video conferencing thing so that people could watch movies together, listen to the same music together, you know, and have listening parties, movie parties, but all be in their own, you know, spaces, their own apartments, cubicles, or whatever. And that stuff doesn't even roll out until the fall, right? And if you have Amazon Prime, you'll already see that they have a little square under some of the shows or movies that says watch party. So they're like getting into that. It's like they're rolling these things out, you know, now, when you would think that this would be a time when you know. So no, it seems, you know, you have to look at the technology. You got to look where the money is. And it seems as if this thing, you know, we're in this never-ending story, you know. So that's kind of mind-boggling. So it's really crazy. These are just, you know, so it's a crazy time on planet Earth, you know. And maybe it's the end of an era. And it's the idea of just living it down, you know, and getting through the best way you can. What else can you do? You know, donate to some candidate you think's going to save the day, you know, the cult of personality. It's not going to happen. You know? Like, you know, it's like the question now, nobody even knows who's in charge of the country right now, you know, in many ways. It's like, you know, I saw that the other day, and I don't know, you know, it's like hard, you know, how people are talking about, but, you know, allegedly, I'm going to say, I don't have any personal verification on that, but the Prime Minister of England, you know, took him 40 hours to get in touch with the U.S. president or something like that. Normally, you know, government leaders reach people literally, you know, instantly at that level, you know. 40 hours. You know, like I say, I don't know. See what they talk. See, that's one of the stories that's, you know, see where that goes, if that has legs. But, you know, you've got, you know, one of the problems with the corporatocracy is that you end up with bureaucrats running things. So like I say, there's no dictator in charge. So you can't point to an individual because it's basically, it's like this rule by committee. And anyone who's ever been on a committee or a board or something like that, like I served on a charity, an arts council board once years ago, a long time ago. And anybody who's ever been on like something like that, a charity board or something like that, knows that it's just the most inefficient, ineffective way to get anything done. And then they form committees and it gets worse because they'll say, well, let this committee do it. And then the committee's arguing, then they have to come back and report and blah, blah, blah. And the only way something really ends up getting done is when someone becomes a little, you know, says, I'll take the ball. Or if they designate an individual to take care of the problem or something like that. Or whatever, the event. Yeah. And I've done the same as with business. I was involved in I just thought about this one project one time where there was like this committee. It was like and we used to have these phone conferences, and they just arguing back and forth, and they would never make a decision, and a week or two would pass by. You know, it's just very inefficient and ineffective. And bureaucrats, they love that kind of stuff, you know, because that's their idea is to just exist, you know, just collect the paycheck, you know. They don't really accomplish anything, and they don't really necessarily have, you know, any great talents. And they despise people that are go-getters or, you know, decision makers, mavericks and stuff like that. They don't like that because that's like, you know, totally against their way. It's really crazy. But that's why I say, you know, it's a corporatocracy, man. It's a former United States. Western civilization's fallen. And I'm just adding today this idea, this mediaocracy, you know, and mediocrity, which comes along with it. And everybody's walking on eggshells who are involved in things. But, you know, you just have to live your life. Find happiness, you know, focus on health, happiness, and your life, and remove yourself from that situation as best as possible.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
So with that, good morning. I guess I'll put an end to it there, and I think I'm going to try and take a walk down the street, see if I can make it. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Visit TonyCaravanLive.com or Rockflux.com. It's the same page. It's a page. But if you scroll down on that page, you will find links to my shirts and mugs and even great solar stuff where you can get some things that'll help you get you through the storms and help you be a little more self-sufficient and all that kind of stuff. So until next time, Have a great day. Enjoy the weekend. It's going to be hot the next week in the better part of this country. So, summer's still with us.